The loose gravel on the shoulder of Highway 78 crunched under my worn-out sneakers. It was the only sound I could register over the deafening roar of cars whipping past me at over 60 miles an hour. The wind lashed my hair across my face, making my eyes water, but I didn't bother to wipe the tears away. My arms were on fire. My 3-year-old son, Leo, was a dead weight against my chest, his head resting heavily on my collarbone as he slept in his carrier. I just kept my eyes fixed on the cracked pavement, focused on the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. When the flash of red and blue lights pulsed in my rear view, I didn't even flinch. I just kept walking. Then I heard a truck door slam shut. It wasn't a stranger. It was my father, Police Chief David Miller, Amelia. His voice was cracked, raw. He sounded afraid. I had never, in my entire life, heard my father sound afraid. He hurried around the front of his police-issued truck, his eyes darting from the dangerous, empty stretch of highway to his grandson strapped to my chest. He gripped my shoulders, his hands trembling. "Amelia, for God's sake, your car is sitting right in the driveway. Why didn't you drive?" I met his gaze. It was the first time I'd been truly honest in 3 years. "I couldn't," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Ethan's mom took my keys. Eleanor says I'm not fit to be behind the wheel." Before I get into the whole story, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. My father gently guided me into the passenger seat of his truck. He was silent at first, just taking the diaper bag from my aching shoulder and tossing it into the back. Then, with a tenderness that seemed at odds with his large, calloused hands, he unbuckled Leo from the carrier on my chest. He carefully strapped Leo into the spare car seat he always kept in the back, just in case he needed to pick up one of his grandkids. I just sat in the front seat, shivering. The truck's heater was blasting on high, but I felt a chill that had settled deep in my bones, the kind of cold a blanket could never touch. My dad slid into the driver's seat. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles shone white. He didn't turn the key. He just stared through the windshield at the traffic rushing by. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and serious. "Talk to me, and start from the very beginning, and don't you dare lie to protect him." I looked down at my hands, which were red and chapped from the biting wind. "I don't know where the beginning is, Dad," I said softly. "It didn't all happen at once. It wasn't like he ever laid a hand on me. If he had hit me, I would have left. I would have called you." "He took your keys," my dad stated, his voice flat. "That's not a normal marriage, Amelia. That's not how this works." "It all started with the help," I said. That's how they framed it. They called it helping. I closed my eyes, and the last 3 years came spilling out. It started right after Leo was born. I was exhausted, but what new mother isn't? I was recovering from a C-section. Every movement was a painful reminder. Ethan was so attentive in those first few weeks. He'd bring me water. He'd change diapers. But then his mother, Eleanor, started showing up every single day. At first, I genuinely thought I was lucky. My own mom passed away 5 years ago, and I thought it was sweet to have a maternal figure around. I was so wrong. Eleanor didn't come over to help me. She came over to take my place. I remember one specific afternoon, about 3 months after Leo was born. I was in the kitchen, just trying to make myself a sandwich. I was still wearing sweatpants because none of my pre-pregnancy clothes fit. Eleanor walked in, not bothering to knock. Ethan had given her a key. She glanced at the sandwich I was making, then her eyes drifted down to my stomach. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with that fake, syrupy sweetness. "Are you sure you need all that bread?" Ethan is working so hard to provide for this family. We want you to stay healthy for him, don't we? You're still holding on to so much of that baby weight. I just put the sandwich down. I couldn't eat it. That was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own home. That night, I tried to talk to Ethan about it. I expected him to defend me. "Mom is just trying to help, Amy," he mumbled, his eyes glued to his phone. "She knows a lot about health and nutrition. And you have seemed a little rundown lately. Maybe she has a point." From there, it just got worse. Slowly, insidiously, like a steady drip of water eroding stone. The money was the next thing. Before Leo, I had a job at the local library. I had my own income, but we had both agreed I would stay home with Leo for the first few years. It seemed like the right decision at the time. Then, the grocery card started getting declined. I was standing in the checkout line at the supermarket with a cart full of formula and diapers. "Declined," the cashier said, not even looking at me. My face flushed with heat. "Can you try it again, please?" "Declined." I had to abandon the entire cart right there. I walked back to my car, fighting back tears, and called Ethan. "Oh yeah, about that," he said, completely nonchalant. "I moved our money into a high-yield savings account to get a better return." "Look, Amy, you're clearly overwhelmed right now. You're not great with finances, and your hormones are all over the place. Why don't I just manage the money for a while? I'll give you cash whenever you need it. It'll be one less thing for you to worry about." He made it sound like a favor, like he was lifting a burden from my shoulders. But what he was really doing was severing my last tie to independence. I agreed. I wanted to be a good wife. I just wanted things to be easy. Then came their favorite word, anxiety. If I forgot to fold a load of laundry right away, Eleanor would sigh dramatically. "Oh, Ethan, just look at this place. Poor Amelia is really struggling with her anxiety again. She can't even keep up with basic housework." If I mentioned wanting to meet a friend for coffee, Ethan would frown. "Are you sure that's a good idea, honey? You seemed so on edge yesterday. I think you need to rest. I don't want you driving when you're this emotional." They repeated it so many times that a part of me started to believe it. Maybe I was going crazy. Maybe I was unfit. I stopped seeing my friends because I was ashamed to explain why I never had any money. I stopped inviting my dad over because Eleanor was always there, a constant presence, judging everything I did. I looked over at my dad in the truck, a single tear tracing a path down my cold cheek. "They checked my phone, Dad," I whispered. "Every single night." Ethan would say he just wanted to make sure I wasn't spiraling. He'd read my text messages. If I complained to my sister or a friend, he would become cold and distant for days. His punishment was always silence. "And the keys?" my dad asked, his voice tight, like a wire pulled taut. "Tell me about the keys." "Last week," I said, "I just wanted to take Leo to the local park. It's 5 minutes away." I reached for my keys in the bowl by the door. Eleanor was there, of course. She put her hand on my wrist. It wasn't a harsh grip, but it was firm. She smiled, that same condescending smile. "Amelia, sweetie, you know the doctor said you need to avoid stress. Driving can be so stressful." Ethan and I talked it over. "We think it's safer if we just hold on to the car keys for now, just until you're feeling more like yourself again." "I'm fine," I'd told her, my voice rising. "I just want to go to the park." "See," she'd said, her voice triumphant. "You're raising your voice. You're getting hysterical. Just give me the keys, Amelia. Don't make a scene in front of the baby." I gave her the keys. I handed them over because I was terrified that if I argued, they'd have more ammunition. They'd say I was dangerous. They'd try to take Leo away from me. So today I told my dad I just needed to get out. I needed to breathe fresh air. I asked for the keys back. Ethan just laughed in my face. He said no. So I strapped Leo into the carrier, and I just walked out the front door. I looked at my dad, my eyes pleading for him to understand. I walked for 4 miles along the highway before you found me. I was walking to your house. My dad was completely still. The only sounds were the fan blowing warm air and the soft, rhythmic breathing of my son in the back seat. My father sat there for what felt like an eternity. He's a big man. He's been the police chief in our town for almost 20 years. He's seen it all. Horrific car crashes, armed robberies, brutal fights. He's accustomed to seeing the worst of humanity. But he's used to seeing it happen to strangers, not to his own daughter. He finally took a breath, and it sounded ragged. "Amelia," he said, his voice heavy, "have you ever heard the story of the boiling frog?" I shook my head, confused. "No." "If you toss a frog into a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out instantly," he explained, "because the shock and the pain are immediate. But if you put that same frog in a pot of cool water and you slowly, gradually turn up the heat, the frog won't notice the change. It'll just sit there, comfortable. It will sit there, right up until it boils to death." He turned in his seat to face me directly. His eyes were filled with a profound sadness, but beneath that sadness, something else was stirring. Anger. A cold, hard anger I recognized. "You're the frog, Amelia. Ethan and Eleanor have been turning up the heat so slowly, you didn't even realize you were being cooked alive." "I thought I was just being a bad wife," I choked out. "I thought I was failing." "No," he said sharply. "That's precisely what they wanted you to think. Now you listen to me. I've been a cop for 30 years. I know what abuse looks like. People think it's a black eye or a broken bone." He jabbed a finger toward the dashboard. "But this, controlling your access to money, that's financial abuse. Reading your private messages, that's stalking. Taking your keys and convincing you that you're insane, that's called gaslighting. And restricting your ability to leave, telling you that you can't leave your own home." He paused, his jaw tightening. "That is false imprisonment, Amelia. They put you under siege. They surrounded you and cut off all your escape routes." I felt a sob catch in my throat. Hearing him say the words, labeling their actions, made it all terrifyingly real. For 3 years, I'd been telling myself it was all my fault. I believed if I could just cook better, clean more, smile wider, they would finally be kind to me. "They isolated you," Dad said, his voice firm. "Why do you think Eleanor was always there? To help?" "No. She was there as a guard dog. She was there to make sure you didn't call me for help. She was there to make sure you never had a single moment of clarity. Ethan is her son," I said weakly. "She loves him." "She doesn't love him," Dad retorted. "She owns him. And she was trying to own you and my grandson, too." He glanced in the rearview mirror at Leo, who was now awake and quietly chewing on his fist, his big brown eyes taking everything in. "They needed to make you feel small so you wouldn't have the strength to fight back," Dad said. "They chipped away at your confidence so they could dismantle your life without ever raising a fist." My dad shifted the truck into gear, but he didn't put it in drive. He put it in reverse. Panic surged through me. "Dad, what are you doing?" "I'm turning around," he said grimly. "No," I cried, grabbing his arm. "Dad, please just take me to your house. I can't go back there. They'll be furious. Ethan will be livid that I left. Eleanor will tell the whole town I'm unstable. I can't face them." My dad stopped the truck. He placed his hand over mine. His hand was warm and rough, but incredibly steady. "Amelia," he said, his voice softening for a moment, "we aren't going back there for you to apologize. We are not going back there to be dropped off." "Then why?" I asked, my body trembling. "We are going back to get your belongings," he stated. "We are going to get your clothes, we're going to get Leo's toys, and we are going to get your car keys." "They won't give them to me," I said. "Ethan told me." "I don't give a damn what Ethan told you," my dad interrupted. His voice had changed again. This wasn't my worried father talking anymore. This was the voice of the chief of police, the voice that people obeyed. "You are not walking back into that house as a victim, Amelia. You're walking in there with me, and I have no intention of asking them nicely." He looked me straight in the eye. "You told me the truth. Now I need you to be brave for one more hour. Can you do that for me? Can you be brave for Leo?" I looked at my son in the back seat. I pictured him growing up in that house, watching his father belittle me, watching his grandmother treat me like an incompetent child. I imagined Eleanor whispering in his ear that his mommy was crazy, that she was sick. I refused to let Leo learn that love was supposed to look like control. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air in the truck suddenly felt a little less suffocating. "Okay," I said. "I can do it." "Good," Dad said. He checked his mirrors, then pulled the truck back out onto the highway, making a sharp, illegal U-turn across the grassy median. The tires spat gravel and dirt. We were heading back. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I was petrified. But for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't alone. "Dad," I asked as we drove down the familiar road. "Yeah, honey, what if they've locked the door?" My dad didn't even glance at me. He just kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his jaw set like granite. "Then I'll kick it down," he said. We drove the last few miles in a tense silence. I watched the familiar houses and trees blur past. This was the same road I used to drive every day before they decided I wasn't capable. It looked different now. It looked like the path leading to a war zone. I pulled down the sun visor and stared at my reflection. I looked exhausted. My hair was a tangled mess from the wind, my eyes puffy and red from crying. I looked exactly like the unstable woman Eleanor always claimed I was. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve and pulled my hair into a tight knot. "I'm not crazy," I said out loud, the words tasting strange in my mouth. "No, you're not," my dad said. "You're the sanest person in that house." We turned onto my street. It was a picturesque suburban street. The houses were large and well-kept, the lawns perfectly manicured. The kind of neighborhood where everyone smiles and waves, completely oblivious to the fact that inside one of those perfect houses, I was a prisoner. We pulled into the driveway. My blue sedan, which I'd bought with my own money years ago, was sitting there, looking perfectly normal. But without the keys, it was just a 2-ton metal cage. We saw them right away. Ethan and Eleanor were sitting on the front patio. A bottle of wine sat on the table between them. They were laughing, looking relaxed and happy. I had been gone for almost 3 hours. I had walked off with their son and grandson, and they weren't frantically searching for me. They hadn't called the police. They were drinking wine. That single image hurt more than anything else they had ever done. They didn't even care that I was gone. They just assumed I'd come crawling back as soon as I got hungry or cold. They were certain I had nowhere else to go. My dad killed the engine. The sudden silence was heavy and absolute. "Stay right behind me," he ordered. He opened his door and stepped out. I unbuckled Leo and held him tightly to my chest, his small body a warm shield. I got out and stood in the cool afternoon air. Ethan's smile vanished the moment he saw us. He rose to his feet slowly. He was dressed in a crisp polo shirt and khaki shorts, the very picture of the perfect suburban husband. Eleanor remained seated, swirling her wine glass with a practiced air of indifference. She looked at me with an expression that was a mixture of utter boredom and mild irritation. "Well," Eleanor said, her voice loud enough to carry across the driveway, "look what the cat dragged in." And she brought back up. How very dramatic. My dad said nothing. He just started walking up the driveway, his boots making heavy, deliberate thuds on the concrete. I followed right in his footsteps. I wasn't the frog anymore, and the water wasn't just boiling, it was about to explode. My father strode up the driveway with a heavy, unhurried pace. I stayed close behind, my hand shielding Leo's head from the cool afternoon breeze. When we reached the edge of the patio, Ethan didn't even have the decency to greet my father properly. He just leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs and swirling the red wine in his glass. He fixed his gaze on me, completely ignoring my dad. His eyes raked over my tangled hair and wind-chapped face before he let out a long, theatrical sigh. "Amelia," Ethan said, his voice oozing with a condescending calm. "The kind you use on a child who's just thrown a temper tantrum. I was just telling my mother that I hoped you hadn't gone too far. You know how you get when you're like this." He gestured at me with his wine glass. "Just look at the state of you. You're trembling. You dragged Leo out into the cold without even a stroller? Honestly, Amelia, this is exactly the kind of behavior we've been worried about." Eleanor chimed in, looking perfectly comfortable in her expensive cashmere sweater. "We were worried sick, David," she said to my dad, though her expression was one of pure annoyance. She just snatched the baby and ran off like a madwoman. "We were actually about to call you to file a report. For her own safety, of course." "Is that a fact?" my dad asked, his voice completely flat. He stood on the lawn, a few feet from the patio, forcing them to look up at him. "Yes," Eleanor said, warming to her story. "Amelia has been having these episodes. Postpartum anxiety, paranoia. She's convinced we're all against her." She let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "She even thinks we're stealing from her. Can you imagine?" Ethan shook his head gravely. "It's the hormones, David. We're just trying our best to manage the situation. We took her keys because, frankly, she's a danger to herself and others on the road. Just look at her. Would you let someone in that state operate a vehicle?" I felt the familiar hot shame creeping up my throat. They were so good at this. They sounded so convincing, so reasonable. If I hadn't just hiked 4 miles down a highway, I might have even started to believe them again. I might have apologized, but then I felt Leo squirm in my arms, his warmth a solid, grounding presence. He wasn't a symptom. He was my son. "I'm not crazy," I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through their performance. Ethan smirked. "See? The defensiveness. That's a classic sign." My dad took a single, deliberate step forward. He crossed his arms over his broad chest. He didn't look at Ethan. He looked directly at Eleanor. "Where are her keys?" he asked. Eleanor blinked, visibly surprised that he wasn't siding with her. "Excuse me?" "Amelia's car keys," Dad repeated. "Hand them over." "David?" Eleanor said, her voice turning sharp and impatient. "You're not listening. She's not fit to drive. We are her family. We are making these decisions for her own well-being." "Are you a doctor, Eleanor?" Dad asked, plainly. "Well, no. But are you a psychiatrist?" "I'm a mother," Eleanor snapped back. "And I know what's best for my son's wife when she's so clearly having a complete breakdown." "She's not having a breakdown," Dad said. "She's having a breakthrough." At that, Ethan finally stood up. He set his wine glass down on the table with a sharp clink, trying to puff out his chest and look like the man of the house. "Now, you listen here, David," he said. "With all due respect, this is my wife, and this is my house. You can't just come onto my property and start making demands. Amelia is staying here. She needs to rest. She needs her medication. I don't take any medication, I said. You tried to make me take those pills, Ethan, but I flushed them down the toilet. Ethan's face twitched. See? Lying. Unstable. He took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. Give me Leo, Amelia. You're shaking. You're going to drop him. Go inside to your room. We can discuss this later. I instinctively flinched and took a step back. No, I said firmly. Amelia, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. It was the warning voice, the one he used right before he punished me with a week of cold silence. Don't make a scene in front of your father. I looked at him. I really looked at him. For 3 years, I had seen a man I desperately needed to please. Now all I saw was a weak man terrified of losing his grip. I took a deep breath of the cool, clean air. I'm not going to my room, Ethan, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I'm leaving. A beat of stunned silence hung in the air. Then Eleanor threw her head back and let out a harsh, dry laugh. Leaving? She cackled. Oh, darling. Leaving with what, exactly? You have no car. You have no money. You don't even own a winter coat. You can't buy a single diaper without asking Ethan for cash. Where on earth do you think you're going? She's coming with me, Dad said. That's kidnapping, Ethan sputtered immediately. That's my son. You can't just take my son. Watch me, I whispered. Eleanor shook her head, that condescending smirk still plastered on her face. David, talk some sense into her. This is utterly ridiculous. She's behaving like a spoiled child. My dad just stared at them. The raw anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by something far more chilling, professional detachment. He was no longer looking at his son-in-law and his family. He was looking at suspects. My father didn't raise his voice. In all his years as chief of police, he'd learned that the loudest person in any room is almost always the one with the least power. He became very, very quiet. You think this is a family matter, don't you? Dad said. You think this is just a little argument between a husband and wife? Of course it is, Ethan said, crossing his arms defiantly. And it's a private one. No, Dad said. It stopped being private the moment you started breaking the law. Ethan rolled his eyes. Oh, give me a break. Don't try to pull rank on me, David. I haven't broken any laws. I'm protecting my wife. My dad stepped onto the patio, his large frame instantly dwarfing Ethan. He had a badge in his wallet, even if he wasn't in uniform. Let's just walk through this, shall we? Dad said. He held up one finger. Amelia owns that sedan. The title is in her name alone. I know this because I co-signed the loan with her 5 years ago. You took possession of her keys. You refused to return them upon request. That, son, is theft, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle at a minimum, deprivation of property. Ethan's smug expression faltered. I was just keeping it safe for her. Dad held up a second finger. You stood in her way. You told her she was not permitted to leave. You used psychological manipulation to confine her to this house. In this state, preventing an adult from freely leaving a premises can be charged as unlawful imprisonment. Eleanor stopped swirling her wine. She set the glass down with a soft click. That is absolutely absurd. We never locked a single door. You locked her mind, Dad countered, and you removed her means of escape. Coercion is a form of force, Eleanor. He held up a third finger. Amelia informs me that you regularly read her text messages, that you monitor her phone calls, that you track her movements. I worry about her, Ethan said defensively. I just check to make sure she's safe. That is stalking, Dad said flatly. It is an invasion of her privacy. And under the latest domestic violence statutes, it constitutes electronic harassment. The word harassment hung in the air like a thick fog. And finally, Dad said, his voice dropping, "The money, I saw it happen." The blood drained from Ethan's face. He shot a panicked look at Eleanor, then back at my dad. "What?" "What about the money?" Ethan stammered. "Amelia tells me she has zero access to her own funds. She tells me her personal accounts were consolidated without her knowledge. She tells me she is given a cash allowance like a teenager. We're a single-income household right now." Ethan almost shouted, his voice cracking. "I'm the one who manages the budget. If you have moved assets that legally belong to her, without her explicit written consent," Dad said, his voice a low growl, "that is financial abuse. And depending on how you moved those funds and whose signature you happen to use, that could very well be bank fraud." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence descended on the perfect little patio. The only sound was a bird chirping cheerfully in a nearby tree. The people were frozen. Eleanor was no longer laughing. She looked at Ethan, her eyes wide with a fear she couldn't hide. "You're being overly dramatic, David," Eleanor said, but her voice trembled. "Nobody committed any fraud. We are just a family trying to help a sick, confused girl." "Then give me the keys," Dad said. He held out his large open palm. "Right now, or I make a phone call. And it won't be to a therapist, it'll be to a dispatch officer." Ethan stared at his mother, a desperate plea in his eyes. Eleanor bit her lip. Her gaze flickered to my dad's truck in the driveway, then to my face. She must have seen something new there because I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't shaking. She reached into the oversized designer purse sitting on the patio table. She rummaged around for a moment, then pulled out my keychain, the one with the little silver A charm on it. She didn't hand them to me. She threw them onto the glass tabletop, where they skidded to a halt with a harsh, grating sound. "Fine," Eleanor spat. "If you want to enable her delusions, be my guest. Take the car, but don't come crying to us when she inevitably crashes it." My dad didn't even dignify her with a response. He picked up the keys. He glanced at them to confirm they were the right ones. Then he placed them in my hand. The cool metal felt heavy. It felt like the most important thing I had ever held in my life, second only to my son. "Go start your car, Amelia," Dad said. "Get Leo's car seat transferred over." "I need my clothes," I said. "I need the diaper bag, his medication." "Go inside," Dad instructed me. "Pack 2 bags. Only what you absolutely need." He turned back to face Ethan and Eleanor. Ethan made a move as if to follow me toward the front door. Dad stepped directly into his path, blocking him. "Where do you think you're going?" Dad asked. "It's my house," Ethan protested. "I'm going inside." "No," Dad said. "You're going to sit right here in this chair. You're going to finish your wine, and you're going to wait." "You can't tell me what to do in my own house," Ethan yelled. Dad leaned in close, his voice a low, dangerous whisper that I could still hear as I walked toward the door. "Ethan, right now, I am the only thing standing between you and a pair of handcuffs. If I were you, I'd sit down and shut my mouth." I heard the sound of a chair scraping against concrete as Ethan obeyed. I walked into the house. It smelled of fake lemon polish and cloying potpourri. It smelled like the place where I had slowly been erased. But I wasn't disappearing today. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my legs feeling surprisingly strong. I went straight to the nursery. I grabbed the diaper bag and started stuffing it with every diaper and pack of wipes I could find. I threw in his favorite stuffed bear and the worn-out blanket my own mom had knitted for him just before she passed away. Then I went into the master bedroom. I refused to even look at the bed where I had spent countless nights crying silently while Ethan slept peacefully beside me. I went to the closet. I grabbed jeans, sweaters, my heavy winter coat, I didn't waste time folding, I just shoved them into a duffel bag. Then I stopped. I looked at the nightstand on Ethan's side of the bed. He always kept the top drawer locked. He said it was where he kept sensitive work files and didn't want Leo getting into them. But Leo couldn't even reach the nightstand. And then I remembered. About a month ago, I'd seen Ethan slip the key to that drawer under the base of the lamp. My heart started pounding against my ribs. I knew I only had a few minutes before Ethan got brave enough to come inside, regardless of my dad's warning. I lifted the heavy lamp. The small brass key was there. I unlocked the drawer. It was filled with papers, a lot of papers, and one thick manila folder. I opened it. My eyes widened. I saw logos for banks I didn't recognize. I saw transfer receipts for huge sums of money. And I saw my name, Amelia Miller, but the signatures, they looked like my name, but the handwriting wasn't mine. I hadn't signed any of these. I saw printouts of text messages, not mine, Ethan's. Messages to his mother, subject, the trust. It read, "She's getting suspicious about the grocery money. Told her it was a bank error. We need to move the rest of the trust fund soon before she tries to access it herself." I felt a wave of nausea so strong the room began to spin. They weren't just controlling me to be cruel. This wasn't just about my supposed anxiety. They were systematically robbing me. I grabbed the entire folder. I shoved it deep into the bottom of my duffel bag, hiding it beneath a pile of sweaters. I zipped the bag shut, walked out of that bedroom and didn't look back. I ran down the stairs and out the front door. Ethan and Eleanor were still sitting on the patio like statues of misery, my dad standing guard, his back to me, watching them. "I'm ready," I said. Dad turned. He saw the bags. He saw the look on my face. He simply nodded. "Get in your car, Amelia. I'll follow you." I walked to my blue sedan. I clicked the unlock button on the fob. The lights flashed and the locks clicked open. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I secured Leo in his car seat. I tossed the bags into the passenger seat beside me. I climbed into the driver's seat. I put the key in the ignition. I turned it. The engine roared to life. I was driving away from that cage, but as I pulled out of the driveway, I instinctively touched the duffel bag next to me where the folder was hidden. I knew this wasn't over. I wasn't just escaping. I was taking the evidence with me. The drive to my dad's house felt like waking up from a long, suffocating nightmare. My hands were clenched around the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were bone white. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see Ethan's car tailgating me, chasing me down. But the only vehicle behind me was my dad's truck, a steady, protective shield. We pulled into the familiar driveway of the house I grew up in, a simple brick ranch with a huge maple tree in the front yard. It always used to feel like just a house. Now it felt like a fortress. I parked and killed the engine. In the sudden silence, my hands began to shake uncontrollably. The adrenaline was fading, and a tidal wave of fear was rushing in to take its place. Dad parked behind me and was at my door before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked. I nodded, unable to form words. I fumbled with Leo's buckle. He was awake now and starting to fuss, picking up on my stress the way kids always do. We went inside. The house smelled like coffee and old books. It smelled like safety. "Sit," Dad said, pointing to the kitchen table. He sat across from me, folding his hands on the worn wood surface. "Amelia," he said gently, "we need to talk about what comes next. You can stay here as long as you need, but we have to protect you legally. If they try to claim you abducted Leo—" "I didn't abduct him," I said, my voice sharp. "I'm his mother." "I know that," Dad said patiently, but they're going to fight dirty. You saw them. They are pathological liars, and they are very, very good at it. I looked at the duffel bag I'd dropped on the floor, the one holding my hastily packed life. I know they lie, I said. I've known for a while. Dad looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. What do you mean? You told me you thought you were the problem, that you thought you were going crazy. I did, I admitted. For the most part, I believed their narrative. When Eleanor told me I was forgetful, I believed her. When Ethan told me I was overspending, I believed him. I reached down, unzipped the bag, and pushed aside the clothes. I felt the cool, smooth manila folder at the bottom, but, I continued, my voice gaining strength, there were always these little moments, these tiny cracks in their story where things just didn't add up. Days when I knew for a fact I hadn't spent $300 at the grocery store. Times when I'd catch a glimpse of a bank notification on Ethan's phone before he snatched it away. I pulled the folder out. It was thick. I wasn't completely broken, Dad, I said. A part of me was still in there. The part of me that you raised. The part that knows how to pay attention. I placed the folder on the table between us. What is this? Dad asked. I took it from Ethan's locked nightstand, I explained. I found the key. I've been watching him hide it under the lamp for months. I just waited for the right moment to take it. I opened the folder. It wasn't just the few papers I'd glanced at. There was so much more. I started spreading the documents out across the table. I was saving things too, I said. Look. I pulled my old phone from my pocket. Ethan always said we couldn't afford for me to have a new one. I opened a hidden album in my photos. I took pictures, I said. Every time Ethan left his laptop open, I took a picture of his screen. Every time I found a strange receipt in the trash, I took a picture of it. Dad picked up one of the official-looking documents from the folder. His eyes scanned it, and his eyebrows shot up. Amelia, he said, his voice grave. Do you know what this is? No, I said. I just knew they were hiding things. I knew it was proof. I was just gathering ammunition, I told him. I didn't know when or how I would use it. I just knew that if I ever managed to get out, I needed to bring the truth with me. Dad looked at me, a flicker of pride in his eyes. But then he looked back down at the papers, and his face turned grim. You did good, Amelia, he said, his voice deadly serious. You did very good, but this is so much worse than just lying about money. What is it? I asked, my heart sinking. Dad got up from the table, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a pair of reading glasses. He put them on, and in an instant, he looked like the chief of police again. We need to go through every single page, he said, right now. For the next hour, the only sounds in the kitchen were the rustle of paper and the steady ticking of the wall clock. Leo had fallen asleep on a pile of cushions in the living room. My dad and I sat at that table and sorted the documents into 3 piles. Pile 1, bank statements. Pile 2, legal forms. Pile 3, printed emails and texts. Ethan, in his arrogance, had kept pristine hard copies of everything, including his own criminal conspiracies. My dad picked up a document from the second pile. It was on heavy blue paper with an official seal. Amelia, he said, tell me about your car. The blue sedan, I said. I bought it 5 years ago. It's fully paid off. I used part of the inheritance from Mom to pay for it in cash. And you have the title? Dad asked. It should be in the fireproof safe at the house, I said. Dad slid a single piece of paper across the table toward me. Look at this. It was a bill of sale, dated 4 months prior. The seller was listed as Amelia Miller. The buyer was listed as Eleanor Preston. The sale price, $10,000. At the bottom was a signature, Amelia Miller. I stared at it. The loop on the A was too round. The M was too sharp. I didn't sign this, I whispered. I never sold my car to Eleanor. 4 months ago. That was right around the time they took your keys, wasn't it? I nodded numbly. Yes. Eleanor said it was for my own safety. It wasn't about safety, Dad said, his voice cold as ice. She transferred the legal ownership of your car to herself. She bought it from you for $10,000, which is less than half its market value, by the way. But I never got any money, I said. Dad picked up a bank statement from the first pile and pointed to a line item. Transfer in $10,000, vehicle sale. And right below it, transfer out $10,000, payment to E. Preston Visa. They moved the money in to create a paper trail, Dad explained, to make it look like a legitimate sale. And then they immediately used it to pay off Eleanor's credit card debt. My stomach churned. They stole my car? Legally? They forged your signature, Dad said. That's forgery. That's grand theft auto. And because they used the banking system to conceal the crime, that's also money laundering. I felt dizzy. But why? Greed, Dad said simply, and control. If the car is legally in Eleanor's name, she can report it stolen if you ever try to drive it. She holds all the power. He set the paper down, but that's not even the worst of it. He picked up a thick, stapled stack of papers. The letterhead read, Northwood Financial Group. Do you have a loan with Northwood? Dad asked. No, I said. I don't have any loans. We have a mortgage, but that's with our local credit union. According to this, Dad said, reading the fine print, you took out a personal, unsecured loan for $50,000 6 months ago. $50,000? I gasped. Dad, I haven't had a job in 3 years. No bank on earth would give me a loan that big. They would if you had a cosigner with excellent credit, Dad said quietly. And if you used your inheritance trust as collateral. He flipped to the last page. There it was again. That fake signature. Amelia Miller. And right next to it, the neat, confident signature of Ethan Preston. The funds were deposited into a joint checking account, Dad said, tracing the numbers with his finger. And then he flipped to another bank statement, a single wire transfer for the full amount to a crypto exchange. My mouth fell open. Ethan was always talking about crypto, bragging about how he was a genius investor, how he was going to make us rich. He gambled it away, I said, horrified. He took out a loan in my name and he gambled it all away. He didn't just gamble it, Dad corrected me grimly. He put the debt in your name. If he loses that money, which he probably already has, you are the one who owes Northwood Financial $50,000, not him, you. I buried my face in my hands. I felt so utterly stupid. While I was worrying about folding towels and what to make for dinner, they were systematically dismantling my entire life, burying me under a mountain of debt. And the trust fund? I asked, dreading the answer. My mom had left me a trust when she died. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to guarantee Leo could go to college. It was supposed to be my safety net. Dad picked up the final statement. It was a single, stark page. Current account balance, $37.50. I just stared at the number, $37. It used to be over $75,000. It's gone, I whispered. It's all gone. They drained it, Dad confirmed. They forged your consent forms to access the principal. They probably told the financial advisor it was for medical bills or therapy to justify the withdrawals. I remembered Eleanor constantly talking about how expensive my special vitamins were. I remembered Ethan saying therapy was a luxury we couldn't afford. It was all a lie. I stood up and walked to the sink, feeling like I was about to be sick. I have nothing, I said, my voice hollow. Dad, I have absolutely nothing. No car, no money, and crippling debt. They took everything. I gripped the cold edge of the counter, my knuckles white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something. No, Dad said from behind me. I turned around. He was standing now, no longer looking at the papers. He was looking at me. You don't have nothing, he said. You have the evidence. He walked over and put his hands on my shoulders. Amelia, listen to me. This isn't a marital dispute anymore. This is not a civil matter. His eyes were as hard as flint. Forgery, identity theft, grand larceny, bank fraud, conspiracy. He rattled off the charges like he was reading from a rap sheet. Ethan wasn't just a bad husband. He's a felon, a multi-felony offender. And Eleanor? Her name is all over this paperwork. She's a co-conspirator. Hell, she might be the mastermind. He pointed back at the table. That folder isn't just paper, Amelia. That folder is a prison sentence. I looked at the messy pile of documents. 10 minutes ago, they had been symbols of my failure. Now they looked like a weapon. What do? I asked. We make copies, Dad said. Digital copies and physical copies. We send one set to my attorney, Ethan Cole. He's the best criminal lawyer in the state. And then, Dad said, a dark look crossing his features, we wait for them to come knocking. Because they will. As soon as they realize that folder is missing, they're going to panic. They'll try to take Leo, I said, the fear spiking in my chest. Let them try, Dad said. They have no idea what you just walked out of that house with. They think you're a scared little girl who ran home to Daddy. They don't realize you're holding the detonator to their entire world. He went to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of water, cracked the seal and handed it to me. Drink, he said. Hydrate. You need your strength. I took a sip. The water was cold and clean. Dad. Yeah? I don't feel like a victim anymore, I said. I looked at the forged signatures, at the stolen money. The sadness was burning away, being replaced by a cold, sharp rage. Good, Dad said, because you're not a victim. You're the star witness, and you're about to bury them. Just then, a violent pounding started at the front door. Boom, boom, boom! It was aggressive, shaking the entire door frame. In the living room, Leo stirred. Amelia! Ethan's voice shouted through the door. It was muffled, but the fury was unmistakable. Amelia, open this door right now. You have my son. Open up, David. Eleanor's shrill voice joined in. We know she's in there. We're calling the police if you don't open this door. My dad looked at the door. Then he looked at me. He didn't move. He was waiting for my signal. My heart hammered in my chest, but I didn't cower. I walked back to the table. I methodically gathered all the papers. I put them back into the manila folder. I held it tightly against my chest like a shield. Let them in, I said to my dad. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my dad's face. It wasn't a nice smile, with pleasure. My dad walked to the front door. He moved without any sense of urgency. He unlocked the deadbolt with a loud, deliberate click. He turned the handle and swung the door open. Ethan and Eleanor practically stumbled into the hallway, their faces red and contorted with rage. Ethan looked like he was ready to punch a hole in the wall. Eleanor looked like she was about to demand to speak to a manager. Where is he? Ethan bellowed, pushing past my dad and frantically scanning the room. He saw Leo sleeping on the cushions. You can't just take my son. That's kidnapping. It's not kidnapping when his mother takes him, Dad said calmly. He closed the door and leaned against it, crossing his arms and effectively blocking their only exit. Eleanor pointed a trembling, manicured finger at my face. You are a danger to that child, Amelia. We are calling Child Protective Services. We will tell them everything. The mood swings, the paranoia, the financial irresponsibility. Stop, I said. I didn't shout. I just said the word. Janet blinked, thrown off. She wasn't used to being interrupted. Excuse me? I said stop, I repeated. I walked toward them, clutching the folder. I'm not paranoid, Eleanor, and I am not financially irresponsible. I held the folder out to Ethan. Take it, I said. Ethan eyed the folder with suspicion. What's this? Some pathetic letter you wrote about your feelings? I don't have time for this, Amelia. Get your things. We are leaving. Open it, Dad commanded, his voice booming through the small house. Ethan hesitated, then snatched the folder from my hand. He flipped it open. Eleanor leaned over his shoulder, her face a mask of impatience. The room fell deathly silent. The first thing they saw on top was the copy of the forged $50,000 loan document from Northwood Financial, the one with my fake signature. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He shakily flipped the page. He saw the bill of sale for my car, sold to his mother. He flipped again. The bank transfers, the printouts of their texts, laughing about how to control me, about how Eleanor told Ethan to cut me off financially so I would be more obedient. Ethan's hands began to shake so violently the papers rattled. Ethan stammered. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with pure terror. Amelia, where did you get this? From your locked nightstand, I said coolly. The one you keep the key for under the lamp. Eleanor ripped the folder from Ethan's hands. She scanned the pages frantically, her face draining of all color until it was a pale, sickly gray. She saw the bill of sale. She saw the proof that she had participated in stealing my car. This is all a misunderstanding, Eleanor stammered, her voice thin and reedy. We were simply managing assets. We were protecting the family's wealth. You forged my signature, I stated. That isn't protection. That's fraud. My dad stepped forward, coming to stand right beside me. That's a Class C felony, Dad said. Identity theft, forgery, grand larceny. And since you two planned it together, that's also conspiracy. Ethan looked at his mother in horror. You told me it was legal. You said as long as we were married, I could sign things for her. Shut up, Ethan, Eleanor hissed. No, please keep talking, Dad said with a grim smile. I do love a good confession. He glanced at his watch. So, here's how this is going to go, he said. You have two choices. Option A, I call my friends down at the station right now. A squad car arrives. You both leave here in handcuffs. Leo goes into my temporary custody with his mother. And you both can look forward to spending the next 10 to 15 years in a state penitentiary. Ethan made a choking sound. Or option B, Dad continued. You return every single cent you stole. You pay off the fraudulent loan at Northwood Financial in full. You transfer the title of the car back into Amelia's name. You replenish the trust fund. And you sign over full, uncontested custody of Leo to Amelia. Full custody? Ethan cried. But I'm his father. You're a felon, Dad shot back. And as of now, you're broke. Do you honestly think any judge is going to give a child to a man who stole his wife's identity to gamble on cryptocurrency? Ethan deflated. All the fight went out of him. He looked down at the papers in his hand. He looked at me, searching for the weak, pliable woman he had created. He was looking for the Amelia who would say, "It's okay, we can work this out." But that Amelia was gone. She had died the moment she saw those forged signatures. I want a divorce, I said, my voice ringing with clarity. And I want my money back, all of it, by tomorrow morning. We can't get that kind of money by morning, Eleanor shrieked. The market is down. We need time. You didn't give Amelia time when you liquidated her assets, Dad said. Figure it out. Sell your jewelry, Eleanor. Sell your house. I don't care. Dad pointed to the door. "Now get out of my house." They left. They didn't storm out this time. They shuffled out like two very old, defeated people. I thought that might be the end of it. I thought they'd scramble to find the money, and I could just walk away. But people like Ethan and Eleanor never know when to quit digging their own graves. The next morning, the money wasn't in my account. Instead, I got a call from an attorney. Their attorney. He informed me that Ethan was filing for emergency custody of Leo, on the grounds that I was mentally unstable and had abducted our child. They were calling my bluff. They thought I wouldn't actually go to the police, that I wouldn't want to send the father of my child to prison. They were wrong. "Do it," I told my dad. We drove to the station. We didn't go in as the police chief and his daughter. We went in as ordinary citizens reporting a crime. I sat in a sterile interview room and laid out the entire contents of the folder for a detective who wasn't my father. I showed him the forged signatures. I showed him the fraudulent car sale. The detective took it very, very seriously. By that afternoon, the police were at Ethan's house with a search warrant. I wasn't there, but Dad told me what happened. They confiscated Ethan's laptop. They opened the safe. When they found the digital evidence of the wire transfers to the crypto gambling sites, the handcuffs came out. Ethan immediately started crying. He didn't even try to protect his mother. The moment the officers mentioned conspiracy, he cracked. It was her idea. He apparently screamed as they led him to the cruiser. "She told me what to do. She said Amelia was too stupid to ever notice." Eleanor was arrested an hour later at her country club. She tried to tell the officers that she was a respectable member of the community, that they were making a terrible mistake. They walked her out in front of all of her friends. She was charged with grand theft, fraud, and conspiracy. The fallout was swift and brutal. It turned out I wasn't the only person they'd been stealing from. Eleanor had been embezzling money from the various charities she volunteered for. Their whole life was a Ponzi scheme of lies, and I was just their easiest mark. The divorce was finalized quickly. It's hard to fight for custody from a jail cell. The judge took one look at the evidence of financial abuse and gaslighting and granted me full legal and physical custody of Leo. The court ordered them to liquidate all their assets to pay me back. Eleanor's house was sold. Ethan's fancy truck was repossessed. It took months, but the money slowly trickled back. The loan from Northwood was declared fraudulent, saving my credit. The car title was returned to my name, but the most important thing I got back wasn't the money. It was the silence. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with texts demanding to know my whereabouts. No one was criticizing my cooking. No one was telling me I was crazy. I watched their lives implode from a safe distance. Ethan took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his own mother. Eleanor is still fighting the charges, burning through the last of her stolen money on lawyers who can't save her. They despise each other now. All the toxicity they once directed at me, they now aim at each other. I just walked away. I didn't even look back at the explosion. 3 months later, I unlocked the front door to my new apartment. It wasn't a big house like the one I'd shared with Ethan. It was a simple 2-bedroom on the second floor of a quiet building with beige carpets and plain white walls. But it was all mine. My name was on the lease. My money paid the rent. My key was safe in my pocket, and no one could ever take it from me again. I walked into the small kitchen. The morning sun streamed through the window. Leo was sitting in his high chair, banging a plastic spoon on the tray and giggling. "More!" he shouted. "More!" I laughed. "Okay, little man, more is coming right up." I sliced a banana for him. I didn't worry if the slices were perfectly even. I didn't worry if organic bananas were too much of a splurge. I just fed my son. I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, looking out at the street. I watched a woman walk her dog. I saw a city bus go by. I felt quiet. My dad came over later that day to help me hang some pictures. He drilled a hole in the wall and hung a framed photo of me and Leo at the park. "Place is looking good, kid," he said, dusting drywall powder off his hands. "Thanks, Dad," I said. "It feels good." He sat down on my small gray sofa. "Have you heard from them?" "Ethan sent a letter from prison," I said. I didn't open it. I wrote "Return to sender" on the envelope and sent it back. Dad nodded. "Good." I walked over to the small desk in the corner. I pulled open a drawer. Inside, tucked way in the back, was the original manila folder. I didn't need it for court anymore. The lawyers had all the official copies, but I kept it. I didn't keep it to stay angry. I kept it as a reminder. Sometimes, when I'm tired or feeling lonely, a tiny, insidious voice in the back of my head will whisper, "Maybe you were part of the problem. Maybe you really are weak." When that happens, I look at that folder. I look at the meticulous evidence I gathered while I was terrified and trapped. I ran my fingers along its worn edge. I wasn't weak. I was smart. I was patient. And when the moment finally came, I was brave. I closed the drawer. Leo toddled over to me and wrapped his arms around my leg. I picked him up and spun him around, and he let out a peal of pure, happy laughter that filled the small, sunlit apartment. I wasn't the girl crying on the side of the highway anymore. I wasn't the wife walking on eggshells. I was Amelia Miller. I was a mother. I was free. I kissed Leo's soft cheek and whispered into his hair, "We're okay, baby. We're safe now. I didn't just escape a bad marriage. I escaped a cage they had disguised as concern. And on my way out, I burned that cage to the ground."